Hello and welcome to Craftiosity, the subscription box of modern craft kits. This month, enjoy the soothing repetition of stitches to create this modern needlepoint journal cover. Once you're done, it's ready for notes, ideas, intentions for the year, or perhaps just to write next week's shopping list somewhere a little more special. Inside your kit, you'll find your needle, your needlepoint canvas, your yarns in golden yellow and parchment colours, and your notebook. You'll also find your step-by-step photo instructions. Using strong scissors, cut 4 canvas rectangles out of the sheets of needlepoint canvas. First cut 2 rectangles which are 43 by 59 squares, then cut 2 which are 20 by 59 squares. Ensure the outside edges of all the pieces are smooth with no jagged bits. Cut an arm's length of the parchment coloured yarn and tie a knot in the end. Start in the top left of one of the larger pieces of canvas. Come up from the back in the third hole down from the top and the second hole from the edge, and then come back down in the second hole down from the top and the third from the edge. This is your first diagonal stitch formed across 2 squares. Now place a second diagonal stitch next to the first over 3 squares, starting and finishing in the same rows as before. Place a third diagonal stitch over 4 holes, and then a fourth diagonal stitch over 5 holes. This is the widest part of the square. Make 3 more diagonal stitches, getting smaller as you go, to form the other side of the square, mirroring the first 3 stitches that you've made. Place a second square next to the first over the same 5 rows, but angle your stitches in the opposite way. Don't leave a gap between the squares, but stitch through the same holes for the side of the square as the first square. The very top row and the far most left and right columns of holes should remain unworked. Repeat this stitch pattern, alternating the direction for each square across the top 5 rows of the canvas. For your second row, begin with a square in the opposite direction to the one above it. Stitch the rest of the canvas following the photo in your instructions as a guide for where to place your squares and in which colour. Repeat for the second large piece of canvas too. Take your time and enjoy the mindful stitching, perhaps spreading it out over a few evenings. Carefully cut the point off all corners of all pieces of canvas, but don't cut into the middle of the corner squares. The actual structure should stay intact. Weave any loose ends to secure them by stitching on the back a few times, but don't worry if it looks a little messy, as it will be covered up. To create the sleeve for the notebook, select 1 stitched canvas, the front, and 1 unstitched panel. Lay the panel on the inside left of the front canvas. Cut an arm's length of the golden yarn and tie a knot. Locate the 7th square up from the bottom. Sew from the back to the front of the work through both pieces, coming up at the top of the 7th square on the outside edge. Bring the needle around to the back of the work, wrapping around the outside edges as you do so. Stitch from the back to the front of the work, this time coming up in the stitch directly to the left of the first binding stitch. Repeat this step twice more. You should now have 3 stitches wrapping from front to back. To complete the binding stitch setup and create the diagonal effect, bring the needle around to the back of the work, wrapping around the outside edges as you do so. This time, locate the stitch 3 squares to the right and stitch from the back, coming up at the front. Continue working in binding stitch as follows. First, wrap the yarn around the edge from front to back, come up in the first unworked stitch to the left. Then wrap the yarn around the edge from the front to the back, coming up in the 3rd stitch to the right. At the corner, work a few stitches on their own around the edge into the corner hole to cover the canvas. Continue working in the golden yarn around the corner and along the bottom short edge, stopping 2 holes short of the long unworked edge. Attach parchment yarn to the bottom of the 8th square in the same hole as the golden yarn started, and repeat the previous steps to set up and then work the binding stitch as you did in the golden yarn. Stop 2 holes from the long edge. Repeat the binding for the back of the notebook and the second panel. Note that you will need to attach the panel to the opposite side of the stitched canvas to make the notebook sleeve symmetrical. Stitch the binding as you did for the front, starting in the golden yarn in the top of the 7th square from the bottom, then binding in parchment. Leave the other long edge unworked. When the front and back pieces are bound around 3 edges, insert the notebook into the sleeve and trim any ends out of the way if needed. With the notebook inside, bind the final 2 long edges together. Work the bottom 7 squares in gold and the top 7 squares in parchment as you did for the opposite side. Sew in any loose ends to secure them. And well done, your needlepoint journal is complete and ready to use. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and we look forward to welcoming you to the next craft kit next month.